Are you listening? Damn.
You're back with the Business of Influence podcast with me, Leroy Mark. We're still outside hanging out with cool people who have incredible jobs like Lesedi Mashale, who is the head of brand and PR over at Nestlé. Lesedi, it really seems like you guys just have a joy at work. Is this fact or fiction?
Well, first of all, hello.
Hello.
And thanks for having me. Do we have fun at work? That is an understatement.
Really?
I mean, we have chocolate brands that are so delicious. What else are we doing?
Listen, if I worked where you work, I would not have a waistline to speak of, okay? But thank you so much for taking time out of the conference to have a chat with us. So at the Business of Influence podcast, we're really interested in your experiences as a marketer, especially in this very dynamic world that we live in, and you as a young person engaging in these very interesting brands and journeys that you're curating for us as consumers. I want to go back a bit and look at your history. And you've worked for interesting brands. You've worked at Diageo, you worked at Samsung. And for me, those are interesting from a marketing point of view because marketing is a functionary, right? You come into a brand and then you do the marketing. And you have to speak to what the brand is. How have you found the differences and the movement between sort of, you know, consumer goods to tech to back to consumer goods?
That's a very interesting question, actually. And when I did make the shift, a lot of people challenged me around, Lesedi, are not sexy lifestyle brands for the most part. So what is it that you're going to do? I always say for me, the magic lies in the actual insight and what it is that we're trying to communicate to consumers subsequently and the benefit for them with the product. If you can personalize or bring to life what the benefit is and showcase it to people, make it tangible, make them experience it, that's the magic of being able to convert, regardless of the industry that you're in.
And regardless of what the brand is, because all brands want to have that conversion.
Well, not necessarily regardless of the brand. I think brands' propositions and differentiators, and as a result, like say product attributes would differ. And if you're distinct and clear, what makes your brand that, and as subsequently, how should people experience it? People will be able to take away, whether it was a vodka, whether it was Samsung, this was my experience of that brand, and as a result, it's product.
How important is when we're doing the marketing to ensure that we are very emotive and really do leverage on that experience with the consumer? Because a lot of what we're seeing right now is we get an extensive amount of data thrown our direction. You know, you've got lots of brands, you can mention 15 vodka brands that you've seen driving up here. How do you then, you know, be intentional about creating the experience but not be gimmicky, because that authenticity is so important?
I think it's a fair challenge and a question. For me, authenticity comes in understanding who your brand is and really interrogating, are we offering a benefit? Are we really, well, it sounds a little bit different, I guess, with some brands because they're not purposeful and they don't change lives. But do we really have an impact and allow somebody to be able to double click and say, this brand as a result is an extension of me? Once you tap into that magic. So whether Lesedi is a cutesy girl, she's at brunch, what are those aesthetics? What do they look like? And as a result, when I'm at the event, do I feel like I'm at home? That for me is how you unlock it.
You mentioned that, you know, they said to you that it's not the glamour brands that you're used to working with. But for me, it's very interesting because there's a fine line between being aspirational and being out of reach. Finding the sweet spot there. And I think what marketing really is about finding the sweet spot.
Absolutely.
Chat to me about getting into, especially in the Nestlé group, finding the sweet spots across those brands. And I want to sort of, you know, biasly look at the chocolate brands, right? Because who doesn't like a bit of chocolate? Because also it's a household thing. You know, how do you find the sweet spot where you're showing something that's easy to enjoy, but not too far out so that I feel like I'm alien to it?
Finding the sweet spot, and I actually want to take it one back, even for instance with brands like at Samsung. A lot of people questioned, how do you make them interesting? How do you make people engage with the products a little bit more? And a good example I would actually bring to the table is partnering with creators that understand design and architecture. So if we're a brand that's so big on, we've made these evolutions, these are the design developments that we've put into the project, and this is the amount of research, history, and legacy. You then need to partner with people that can actually bring a story like that to life. And a creator, for instance, that we worked with at the time was Nabila Karim. She is phenomenal. So she's very clear. And for me, she's also quite distinguished within the space and in the content territories that she plays. People are clear. She's very articulate. She's very distinct. She's very premium. And she's very clear from the way she works. So once you merge her with the brand that you're trying to communicate, and it could be a fridge, which we did, the magic comes to life because then people, one, believe her. Two, they actually understand what she's trying to communicate, and she can relay that to her community, better than what we potentially could. It's easy as brand people to be very precious about this is what our brand says, but we're actually not clear. Are people understanding, believing, or even experiencing that in real time? So that for me is the sweet spot.
And the platforms that you also have those content creators speak on, right? Because it's so easy for us to get lost in the sort of analysis paralysis of one platform and think it will apply to every
another
other
brand,
one, and then lose ourselves in all of that. Because I definitely see, for instance, some of the brands in the Nestlé group being very much family orientators, being about the South African family environment. And I'm interested to find out from you, when we start then looking at even like a Samsung, when you start looking for those influences, I think a very big part of it is not losing the authenticity while also getting the message across. And as a content creator, one of my biggest pet peeves is that I never know what is required of me. The brief can be 14 pages long. At the end of it all, I go, so what's my job again?
What do you want me to do? It wasn't clear.
Yeah. So, that must make your job much harder. But how do we then make sure that as a content creator in the space of influence and lending my influence to the brand, that you guys find the common ground of that authenticity? It must be so interesting.
I think for me, if we start with a 14-page brief, that sounds absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how brands even hold a creator's attention for that long, or even just yourselves when you're putting it together. For me, before trying to say, this is what my brand is trying to do, understand who are the creators that are speaking to the consumer that you're trying to reach.
Okay.
One. You need to study their style. You need to understand it and how their audience engaged. And then when you brief them as a brand, articulate what your issue is, or what your product is and what its benefits are. After that, my personal view is you need to leave it to the creative.
To create.
Because that's where the magic comes. It doesn't make sense when I see brand teams creating assets for influencers and I'm like, goodness, why? First of all, a lot of their costs tend to be inclusive of production and you are taking away the magic. Nobody wants to see your F-graded films and tell us it took, 12 hours of production. Influencers can do it in 2 hours. And do it a lot better. And people will believe them and make it more relatable. So I think for me, that tends to be quite a very tricky balance, because I think also between the growth of influencer marketing and some of the advertising budgets shifting, there is this space around creative agencies want to hold on to that spend versus trying to find ways to actually collaborate with creatives to make sure that the space grows.
That is my favorite C word, collaborate, because I think we're losing a lot of it in the discussion, because as you say, the brands still have their bottom line and the agencies have their bottom line too. They still need to pay for the people they deal with. Chat to me about about the bottom line, from being able to keep and manage the sales, but also as marketers, we've often seen as the people who go there and make us look good while the real people do the work in the back office. And as content creators, then we need to understand that so that we realize that when we're speaking on your behalf, how do we convert, how that can potentially be a lead to convert to a sale. So I guess my question is, how do we almost finish the circle where we've got the great idea, we've got the content creator, and then make sure that it does actually have a return on investment for the brand?
So for me, it needs to start at articulating what is return on investment. I don't believe that all influencer or creator campaigns are actually going to generate sales. Sometimes brands are looking to change sentiment around a product. People could have thought a flavor is absolutely disastrous or there's been a pack size change. But then partnering with creators that showcase the fact that that isn't the instance, already allows you to dilute a conversation that could have been so negative towards your brand. I think also subsequently, consideration and awareness are big. And those generate demand that will then convert into a sale. So for me, in terms of being able to close the loop, and it's a pain point of so many different brand teams, and potentially it's also an opportunity for learning as part of the briefing process. Creators need to understand, when I ask, or when brand teams say the content deadline is by X date, this is the reason why. So you could generally say we have a sales promotion running at the time, and the more people that are aware of it over this period, we do believe it will have an impact on sale, even though we can't directly match it to a Lesedi or even a Leroy. Or subsequently, we tend to have a frequency of 3. when it comes to TV ads, and that's how we know that people then will potentially see our communication or they'll start considering it.
Yes.
So in order to be able to flight or to even boost your content to an exposure of 3 to any people, we need to be able to do it for, I don't know, 6 weeks. So we need you to submit by X date.
The time frame is not arbitrary.
You know what I mean? So that people are very clear that, okay, fine, what I'm doing actually feeds into a bigger ecosystem as opposed to I'm just creating content. I think also a lot of creators don't understand the value in the immaterial because it's very easy for a brand to say your content is performing so well. Our retail partner, whether it's ShopRite or even Checkers, wants to use it. Can we pay you extra and help them drive conversion? But now if your content is 3 weeks late,
and also, it doesn't have the right framing.
It doesn't have the right framing. You don't know the aspect ratio. You didn't know not to include a competitor brand. You were shooting yourself in the foot.
It's also not doing your work. It's just not coming to do the work. I'm interested as our parting shot, Lesedi, and you know, your enthusiasm for this industry is absolutely infectious. You are a young South African woman and a professional in what you do. Chat to me about, especially because you've worked with a vodka brand that's international, you've had some international activations about it. What is the Africanness or the African ability of marketing going forward? So that now that we've created a new word, what I mean is, so much of our brands require us to refer back to America and the global West because we just don't have our own history data to work from. And we're charting a new course on most days. We're breaking new grounds on most days. What do we do as Africa and South Africa more particularly to drive the narrative, one, as an industry, but also for the brands that you represent? I love what you said about what you're doing with a flavor that isn't doing so well, and then having to change the sentiment. Because I've seen it happen. I've seen people who go, oh, why didn't you say that? When you said it the other way, we didn't understand it. But now that you're speaking to me, you know, one of our other guests said, you've met me where I am. You know, now I'm able to understand what you mean from you. What do we do now to make sure that when we go forward, we're able to include ourselves, I guess, in the conversation as Africa?
So I would say more than just marketing, and I guess influencer marketing being a subset of it. And I like the point around you met me where I am. I think that genuinely needs to be a consideration for what does it take to grow the industry and the responsibility on all parties, or let me say both sides. A common criticism when it comes to whether it's the remuneration within influencer marketing or some of the creatives that people are using, like, no, we get underpaid versus creators in Kenya, or we get underpaid versus creators even in the US and United Kingdom, or even, no, brand teams generally don't understand what it is that we want, or they use the same people. Those for me tend to be the same three, and what's stifling the growth within this space. My pushback is always then, have you ever considered that those people that are used all the time deliver?
And they've done something right.
And in full. And there is safety net for brands, because a brand team is not going to chase them for 3 weeks trying to get a contract signed, or trying for them to deliver content, or to just even record it in the way that was briefed. One, I think also there needs to be an understanding of the industry that people are playing in. It's great for you to say, oh, I'm a creator, I want to make money today, but brand teams don't understand me. And I know sometimes it's something that we tend to shy away from, but corporate South Africa is a little bit older. And people are coming in, whether we call them Gen Z or millennials. There's a responsibility to teach, to disarm, and as a result, support people. A lot of people don't want to teach a lot of the people in corporate, what does influencer marketing look like? And teaching them means, okay, guys, did you realize that on this campaign, these were my results, these were my effectiveness? I also say from even a relationship management, I don't find influencers being forthcoming with what they even understand of their own channels. You'll ask creators, hi guys, we have this campaign, this is when it needs to go live. Maybe 1 in 7 will say, sorry, in terms of my stats, my best performing videos are actually on a Tuesday at 7 p.m. So instead of posting with everybody else, can I post at this time? Very few will say that, whereas that already for me is even education from somebody who's sitting in the office, because then they can say, oh, why? No, it performs better, or these type of trending topics work well on a Tuesday, or whatever it is. But already you're helping somebody learn who typically would have said, oh, your content didn't perform well, but you never told them.
And you're just showing that you know what your business is. I mean, if I had you here sitting across from me and you didn't know what you were talking about, then you wouldn't have the job that you have.
I agree.
And I appreciate that it's so mindful and intentional, that it's not just shooting in the dark. I think the reason why it's so much easier for content creators to sort of go and hope that something happens, you know, throw stuff on the wall and hope that there's a result, is because they don't understand it, and the people who are briefing them don't understand it.
They really need to. And it's everybody's responsibilities. It's not just the brands. The brands, rightfully so, deserve the criticism, and I get it, but it is not just their responsibility.
I also think that if you're part of the business and you know what your part in the business is, then you're able to come through and say, actually, not Lesedi, can we also change it in this way?
Absolutely. You know, brands are open to that.
I don't think it'll work this way. Maybe can we have a different voice? You know, I've had a campaign where I wanted to change the tone. Where I was like, you are me, I'm bored. I'm bored. So
I wouldn't put it like that. I think my audience wouldn't be receptive to this type of tone, but the sentiment lads.
I'll bring the good English in, but I appreciate what you're saying about, one, it's a responsibility that's a collective. And I think for me, maybe my parting question would then be, what do you think is the next frontier of marketing? Whether realistic or not, but what is the next frontier that you really want to see happen in this industry?
What I want to see happen is more independence being given to creators in particular, not influencers, creators, because I really feel like there's so much magic there. There's a campaign, I can't really talk about it because I'm not sure when this is going live, but we literally handed over our brands to creators and we said, show us what you can do.
Run.
We gave them a theme that we obviously would like to see them deliver against and what the storyline could potentially look like. But what it looks like for their channels is up to them. And the amount of learning that we've gotten out of that is phenomenal. I also think a lot of people are fatigued. I was actually laughing with someone when we were reviewing content. And I think the content was 50 seconds long. Already at 20 seconds, someone was like, oh my goodness, it's so long. Are people really going to watch this? And I was like, I can't believe we live in a world where you've lost people's attention already at 20 seconds.
A third of a minute.
So, do you know what I mean? And that's how a lot of us were taught in terms of advertising. Your TVC has to be 30 seconds. But now in terms of short form and video, creators are doing it in 5 seconds and landing the story. And that for me is, how do we tap into it in brands and shift the spend and support them?
I think it goes back to the C word you used, collaboration. Lesedi Mashale, head at Nestlé. I think it's, you know, apart from making great chocolate, they make great conversation too.